Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Vertical Agnostic Digital Marketing Agencies, Myth, Reality, or Transition. I'm Justin Sargent, and I'll be hosting today's session. Legacy advertising agencies continue to dominate in the core area of creative and branding. However, as marketing budgets converge and campaigns become a part of larger digital transformation engagements, the industry expertise IT services-led and strategy-led vendors offer and differentiator and conversions across the C-suite. This webinar will highlight how the lines between legacy agencies and professional service providers begin to blur and what vendors are doing to remain competitive. Information shared in this presentation will help players excel in the market. Insights from today's presentation are from TBR's Digital Marketing Services Benchmark. To learn more about this product, please reach out to myself or one of the analysts after the presentation. Now, before we begin, there are a few items I'd like to cover. First, we'll be recording today's session and posting it on a YouTube channel, TBRI channel. We encourage you to visit our channel to view this presentation or any of the previous webinars we've posted. Second, I will be following up with all of you via email tomorrow afternoon with a recording link as well as with the slides from today's session, so please be on the lookout for that. And finally, we welcome questions from the audience on the material we're presenting. Please send any questions you have to the Q&A function. We will address as many as we can at the end of the presentation. Now, I'd like to introduce the analyst presenting today. Stuart Williams is Vice President of Research at TBR, where he leads TBR's digital practice, which produces product today, TBR's Digital Marketing Services Benchmark. Patrick Heffernan is a Principal Analyst in TBR's Professional Services practice and is a Content Editor for the Digital Marketing Services Benchmark. And finally, we have Boz Hristov, an Analyst in TBR's Professional Services practice and the author of the Digital Marketing Services Benchmark. And with that, let me hand this over to the analyst.
Stuart, thank you very much, Justin. This is Stuart Williams, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Just a quick coverage note on our digital portfolio. This is one of the many coverage areas that technology business research has. And in this area, we're looking at how technologies are being adopted across the ad tech and marketing segments, essentially the outbound customer engagement continuum that enterprises have in order to drive revenue. And in this area, we're helping our clients to identify opportunity, adjust their messaging to align with customer needs, and to improve their competitive positioning. Other reports that we have are listed on this slide, which include vendors' profiles, additional benchmarks, and in-depth customer research. Our view into this segment of the marketplace essentially covers the activities that enterprises undergo as they begin to transition audience target segments into customers and then to retain their customers. The advertising segment of the market looks at the conversion of audiences into leads. The winning customer segment takes the leads that are identified, brings them through a sales funnel to become customers and to engage them through e-commerce, potentially. And then the transition into active live customer service and how the knowledge through both traditional and social channels is gleaned to be able to improve service levels, satisfaction, and inform product development. Wrapped around all of this is a huge opportunity for the professional services vendors. And in this presentation, we're going to look at a cluster of three types of vendors, the consultant firms, the IT-led vendors, and the traditional ad agencies who are all beginning to compete mightily to win the expanding budgets in this space. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Boz Hristov, who leads our coverage in the services area.
Thanks, Stuart, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As Stuart just pointed out, in the benchmark that we cover here in digital marketing services, we'll look at the broader space and see the participants who are winning in that space. So in order to be able to map their portfolios and their investments, so we'll look at 4 different service lines that we try to map as close to their portfolios as possible. We have a digital strategy, we have the creative and branding, web, mobile, and commerce, and advertising analytics. It's more of a stack and kind of looking at also in a parallel the professional services, the way we look within TBR, and kind of see what are the overlap as well as what are the nuances the digital marketing space offers and how those vendors that we track within the benchmark how they're positioning within those service lines. So basically the benchmark, just wanted to kind of start looking at what we saw over the last 6 months. The digital marketing services benchmark looks at 16 vendors in 3 different groups, and on the slides we look at the 3 key trends that were identified based on the vendors' performance as well as the investment activities, and some of them also coming from our customer research and what customers are saying about the vendors when they engage with them. So the first one is the opportunity. We look at the digital marketing services versus how it relates to overall IT services market, and what is the growth opportunity and how that new competitive landscape is creating that new opportunity. The second one is what are the service lines and how are those vendors investing and positioning, and how are they grabbing share from each other essentially to move forward, and how the strategy as an entry point and then creative and branding is what's really the traditional marketing. But what's coming is the analytics and technology services, the link between the front-end engagement and the creative engagement, and how that drives more opportunities for vendors that are ramping up their capabilities in that direction. And lastly, we took a little closer look at how the vendors in the group are reacting to industry agnostic versus not just the industry specific capabilities. We want to see is something that has been the agency's essentially legacy of being we're able to deliver content, marketing content across multiple industries, and we can address marketing campaigns across at the same level. Is that still a reality? Is it still something that's holding up that truth, or because the new entrants are coming into space, they are forced to move into and to retune their portfolios and their go-to-market strategies? So starting with the first trend is the opportunity trend. I just wanted to, before get deeper into the numbers, to explain the differences here. So the IT services benchmark that we track within TBR covers 30 vendors. And the average trailing 12 months revenue for those 30 vendors, as you can see, contracted 2.1% in the second quarter of 2015. In contrast, the digital marketing services vendors that we look from a digital marketing perspective expanded at 19%. Granted, the scale is totally different from $500 million versus $10.9 billion in terms of the average revenue, but it's also presenting a new landscape opportunity for the vendors that to support enterprise migration through tech-enabled marketing. Marketing campaign decisions are based on data bolsters buyers' confidence, essentially, and it is focusing the spend on marketing and begins to shift kind of the value proposition of marketing spend and be like, okay, now that we can track our spend, maybe we want to look at marketing spend more as a profit center, not just a cost center at the end of the day. Between the two benchmarks, if we have to kind of look at the spaces, there's only 4 vendors that are overlapping within the two benchmarks, which is, again, another lens to take a look at that space is 12 other vendors outside IT services benchmark, but there's also the digital marketing services benchmark, but there's also what does that space present, and who are the new vendors that are contenders that are looking at that space. We have started looking closely into the India-centric vendors, for example, that are still ramping up their capabilities. They are partnering, they're acquiring SKUs in areas that they have gaps. And certainly, as a group, we are keeping a close eye on them and possibly including them in the next iterations of the research, because as they ramp up their skills, we want to make sure we look at the landscape as comprehensively as possible and not to miss certain players within that space. On the next slide is looking at more of a geographical view and where the opportunities are by region. Before I get into what the numbers represent, I want to make sure you have a clear understanding of the graph. The bars are, as you can see, the revenue side is expanding. The growth rate seems to be decelerating from a year ago compare. However, it's still a growing, fast-growing market. We see again it's again a conjunction of vendors that are trying to compete for marketing dollars and new contenders, as I suggested earlier, start getting to that space that are creating some threats for the traditional agencies and or some of the IT services vendors that have started already establishing their positions in that space. From a geographical perspective, when we compare the customer research that we do here in our digital practice and how it relates to the vendor's performance, we saw the Americas market more maturing faster, and we attribute that maturation of the market more towards the buyers in that market more inclined to spend money on digital transformation engagement and folding in digital marketing into the broader digital transformation. We show an adoption rate and incidence rate across 3 out of 4 service lines, pretty equal incidence responses within the customer research. Again, it's creating that opportunity, Americas and specifically North America, where the larger enterprise vendors are ready to spend a little more on the mature curve ahead of the European counterparts that are still more looking at a cost takeout and still want to see, okay, what do we do now? Is it going to run the marketing campaign through a local boutique, or we're going to fold marketing through engagement with someone like Accenture or IBM that has already the digital capabilities and the scale that can deliver from migrating our application from legacy to be run on the cloud, as well as running our campaigns as well. And the next slide is getting a little deeper specifically to the vendors. Look at the opportunity. We'll look at by region. We want to see how, again, the cluster of vendors that we track here is a highlight on the bubble chart. You know, the TBR's bubble chart really speaks up kind of volume in terms of what the vendors are doing. The 3 different groups: IT services vendors, strategy-led vendors, and the traditional agencies. It's a competition. It's an increased competition, and everyone is trying to evolve their portfolios, so being able to get at the speed and deliver more of a marketing tailored campaigns, because customers are getting more educated. I mean, the technology is allowing that, so it's how do we address customer interaction at speed, essentially. So, for example, the professional services, IT services, and strategy-led vendors, they continue to win share against the legacy agencies as they're able to integrate strategic fit buys like creative and branding, or they bet on their relationship with the C-suite, and offer to run campaigns delivered from client-facing local studios. They've been expanding their studios organically. In that same token, agencies start responding to that threat to making acquisitions or strategic alliances that bolster their business transformation and technology expertise. The way we view the market and what we believe is a trend that we're going to keep an eye on is that vendors that can offer solution-led approach and business transformation industry expertise backed with marketing business platforms as a service IP are really positioned to win in that very competitive market landscape. I'll flip over to Patrick, please.
Excellent. Thank you, Boz. So I think Boz really teed us up well for the rest of this conversation, because now you see that we're taking a very vendor-centric, vendor-lens approach to looking at this entire market. But before we go into vendor by vendor and look at some of the differences there, we need to look first at the different service lines. So within digital marketing services, we have strategy, web mobile commerce, creative and branding, and advertising and analytics. And what you can see here in the shift from last year to this year, it's a little subtle in terms of the percentage of the service lines that are making up the revenue across the space. And it really reflects 2 sort of key trends. One is that strategy and branding and creative, I think previously had been sort of good to have offerings, especially for the technology-led vendors, so that's Accenture and IBM and Deloitte, for example. But we're seeing now that these are really essential in order to compete. Absent that full complement of capabilities from strategy through creative and branding all the way down through advertising, analytics, web mobile commerce, you have to have everything. Otherwise, you're leaving money on the table, or honestly, you're not invited to the table. And then the second sort of key trend here, I think, is purely analytics. We're seeing really the integration of the analytics capabilities across, well, it's not only across digital marketing services. Honestly, for the vendors that we're looking at, it's across the entirety of professional services, of IT services, where adding analytics capabilities either through acquisition or through R&D is making a huge difference in terms of growth rates. If you look at BCG, Deloitte, McKinsey, they all stand out for having made analytics acquisitions over the last couple of years that are beginning to spool out into areas like digital marketing services. So another area where we're seeing some shifts, and these are subtle. Now we're moving from looking at the service lines to looking at the different the service lines in terms of, I got to make sure I'm oriented to this graph the right way. We're looking at strategy and creative and branding. It's the share of, okay, so we've moved from, we've moved from the share of the service lines within the overall picture to the share of the service line by vendor group. So the blue part is the strategy-led, think McKinsey and BCG. The orange or red part is IT services, so think Accenture, IBM, and then the green part are the agencies, Ogilvy and Mather and the like. So what we're looking at here now is what percentage of the total strategy bucket is earned by those different vendor groups and what percentage of creative and branding. And again, these are kind of subtle shifts, but in both cases, in both strategy and in creative and branding, the agencies are losing ground. And you know, it's important to note the IT services-centric vendors are actually growing in the strategy space. I think that reflects an overall investment by Accenture and IBM in particular in strategy consulting. It's an emphasis by those two firms. I would put Deloitte in there as well. But Deloitte's strategy consulting has been a core strength for a while. But all three of those firms, who are the large firms within the IT services-centric bucket, have all made a shift in recent years, in the last 18 months, toward emphasizing strategy both organizationally and then in their go-to-market. And I think we're starting to see that spin out in digital marketing services as well. More curious maybe is the change in the creative and branding side. And when an analyst says more curious, what they mean is they don't fully understand what's happening. But my guess here is that what we're seeing is a change in the key hires that were made by IBM and Accenture in particular, BCG and PwC as well, in the creative and branding space, that they were bringing on board people who had previously been at the agencies or previously had experience in the advertising world. And that shift, I think, reflects that of all of these four service lines, talent really is the key difference in creative and branding. So the last two we'll look at here are digital marketing services, web, mobile, and commerce, and advertising and analytics. And in contrast to the last two slides where the shifts were clear, if subtle, it's a lot more mixed here. In web mobile commerce, we can see that the IT services group finally tipped over 50%. They went from 48.9 to 51.1. That's dominance in any industry. And I think that reflects why are IT services so strong in mobile web and commerce? I think that really reflects two key traits that are shared by IBM, Accenture, and IBM, among the others in there. And they have legacy application development capabilities, obviously more true for IBM than the others, but they're far further advanced than the others, than the strategy-led or the agencies in having that application development capabilities. And they've made investments in mobility and user experience or interactive, whatever you want to call it. Everyone has been investing in that. You can't talk to anybody that hasn't invested in mobility lately in the last 4 or 5 years. But I think the IT services-led vendors, that's more established, their business models fit with this better. They're better able to roll out and deliver these capabilities than their competitors in the space. So that's why you're seeing strategy-led and the agencies falling off a bit while the others, the IBMs, Accentures, and Deloittes get strong. In advertising and analytics, the real question here is why are the strategy-centric firms growing in what you would guess would probably be the strongest area for both the agencies and for the IT services led firms or centric firms? I think you have to put this in context. The strategy firms have traditionally had that top-level C-suite relationship. They've had that permission to play. And when they add analytics capabilities, whether it's through R&D or acquisitions, as I mentioned before, they can then piggyback those capabilities onto the traditional consulting, the S&O work that they've always done. And that's not only in digital marketing services, it's really across the board. So that allows them to bring those analytics capabilities to play. They've already got the permission to be there. It's an opportunity for them to grow, whereas the others, perhaps the expectation was there all along. There's two big challenges for the strategy firms in this area, though. Can they actually compete in terms of breadth and depth and price when you're talking about competing with IBM or Accenture in an analytics play? And then can they manage the talent? The business model around analytics is different than it is around traditional S&O consulting. So for the strategy firms, that's going to be the hard part going forward in order for them to continue growing. So with that, I will hand it back to Boz for what we're going to see next. There we go.
Thank you, Patrick. So to get into the kind of the nitty-gritty of the presentation, as well as to tie into the initial title of the presentation, is looking into the vendor-specific lens, as well as how those vendors reacting and who's winning the space and why, in terms of, is it the industry expertise of the professional services versus the branding expertise on the agency side, and how each of them are winning. So for decades, I mean, the agencies have been around for many years, and they've been transforming their portfolios and their go-to-market from being just a traditional marketers to a digital marketers today. They claim to be industry agnostic, and they're able to run those campaigns the same approach that they're able to run a campaign retail, they're able to run a campaign automobile or food and beverage. But at the same time, they're able to learn from clients' experiences, and they're able to get a repeatable framework of those campaigns, how they were running them, and start getting their revenues tilted or weighted into some verticals more than others. So this, in spite of what they were claiming and what they were touting, essentially they start getting to that, okay, we're better at retail, like for example with someone like RGA, or we start getting a little more traction in food and beverage, someone like Ogilvy and Mather, just kind of getting because of that previous experience. So that shift started to track, especially with the digital, and now the digital interaction, digital marketing campaigns are really forcing those agencies to start to get a little bit more, how do we tailor that message to industry specific? And we have that platform to do that, and now not only will we have to apply and react to the platform, but we also have another group of vendors, like professional services vendors, that are coming to play. And what do they bring is their expertise of industry, just they're touting, that's how they make their money essentially. We are hiring industry laterals, so we're hiring industry-born experts, and now we have the tech-enabled IP that can actually run those campaigns. So we have that business transformation industry expertise, not just nurturing a brand within the industry that the agencies are doing. So we see an ongoing battle, but in our view, the way we see the market is going is vendors that can actually layer branding and design capabilities on the top of core industry expertise. I'm talking about industry expertise around legislation and laws and regulations that you know the industry inside and out, and that's how you've been going to market for many years. The vendors that can do that layering design and branding on top of core industry are actually positioned to win, essentially, because they are able to, digital marketing campaigns are becoming part of a larger digital transformation, but also we see a lot of IT employees being key budget keepers for marketing as well. We see a shift, or at least melding, between the budgets between the CMOs and the CIOs. So for agencies to remain competitive and not just talk to the CMO, they have to be able to talk to the CIO. So they need that, getting to know a little bit more of the technology side of the house, understand what's really happening in the industry. Is it depending on the one that they're going from energy to retail to automotive, as I mentioned earlier. So there is just what's happening on the client side is really forcing agencies to revamp and retune their go-to-market and their portfolios as well. We know that some agencies have done a little better work than others. We see healthcare as one opportunity for some of the agencies that have already invested in similar capabilities, a little bit more deeper dive, like Ogilvy around the Ogilvy Common Health Worldwide. We know Publicis have a Publicis Healthcare Communication Group. Again, the Publicis Healthcare Communication Group is more of a conglomerate of string of agencies that are under the umbrella. but they are making efforts. They are making efforts to get to know it more on the industry base and to look more tailored. I mean, healthcare is one of the examples, and I guess with the shift in healthcare towards more of a retail-like approach, that could be a beneficial for the agencies, but expanding on globally outside healthcare, there's certainly some challenges along the way for agencies. They don't ramp up their industry-specific expertise. So what I want to do is kind of go into the vendor groups as well and kind of dissect each of the vendor groups, what they're doing, how they're reacting. We talked about business transformation, industry expertise, IP investments, how each of the group of the vendors are moving and how are they performing in a vacuum, essentially. So each of the strategy-led firms grew their revenue ahead of the benchmark average. These vendors are still able to benefit from their legacy advisory capabilities and ability to recognize and recommend the best suited solutions without taking additional risk of implementing and managing. That's the typical McKinsey, BCG or Bain work that they usually do. Strategy-led firms, however, are compelled to invest also in non-consulting capabilities such as design analytics, as Patrick pointed out, so they can kind of capture a little bit of that share, and we saw earlier in advertising analytics that they are expanding their share of revenue. A couple of examples to point out here. I mean, EY acquired Sirin, it's a design firm, where McKinsey acquired Lunar and partnered with analytics and artificial intelligence vendor SetMap to improve its analytics-backed customer care capabilities. We don't expect them to become agencies, but they certainly enough breadth of their portfolio to disrupt the agencies and the IT services market in order to win share of what they typically operate in. On the next slide is the IT services vendors, and that group is really fascinating because they're the one that kind of moving the fastest in terms of accelerating investments, organic and inorganic investments, so they can kind of see, well, we already have the presence in this across the C-suite. We have the IT knowledge and breadth and depth of our portfolios, either organically or through alliances. So what do we do next? How do we get where we want to be? And there's a lot of lucrative opportunities, as we pointed out earlier. I mean, it's a 19% average trailing 12-month growth for the benchmark market that we're looking into here. So, and that's not the whole market. I mean, it's certainly a portion of it, but it's the biggest and the largest vendors and the fastest growing vendors, but certainly more contenders. So IT services vendors are really getting into and building scale and skills and becoming key contenders across verticals and geographies. Couple of examples to point it out here. I mean, Deloitte, it still goes to market as a strategy firm or sort of like the consulting agency that blends and able to have the relationship with the C-suite and bringing the design capabilities through Deloitte Digital, but also building a full stack at the same token. I mean, we would not expect Deloitte to be going into a people-driven BPO, but as the company is certainly making some moves in investments in automated BPaaS solutions. I mean, they recently acquired LRA Worldwide, getting some capabilities around customer experience measurement. So it's kind of an indicator where the company is not, the firm is not shy of expanding the stack of its offerings. IBM is the other example I want to highlight here. Is the largest revenue from a revenue perspective vendor that we track in the benchmark. And it's no surprise, we talk about customer experience, we talk about customer interaction, mobility. IBM, that's their forte, essentially, as a company. But pair that with the investment in design, creative, and prepackaged solutions, and the large scale of enterprise clients that they already have, they use that as an entree to establish accounts to can get in and essentially lend and expand or expand wallet share of existing accounts once they have the capabilities gained through IBM Interactive Experience. And the last group is the agencies. Essentially, the agencies are really the one that have been in that market for a long time, but now we see them struggling, essentially, because there's so many contenders and competitors of how they are reacting to see what they're doing. I mean, they know how to run campaigns. They have the CMO's relationship. They still hold that battle, but it's certainly a lot of uncomfortable times, essentially, for them coming from IT services and strategy-led vendors. especially when clients are looking to for new, kind of getting to, hey, what else? We're auditing our marketing vendor who's running our campaigns. Maybe there's somebody new and somebody better. We can blend all these services. So we need to kind of see, as an agency, what do we do to react to that threat? Like, as they pointed out, some have started reacting in different stages in their maturity, essentially. But what we see is, like, Ogilvy Matter is really betting on the relationship with IBM to gain access to the IP and skills it will otherwise have to pay premium, and getting to learn that experience, learn the framework, and see what they're doing best. The Ogilvy Matter IBM relationship is also at a corporate level. Back in February, Ogilvy's holding company, WPP, essentially rebadged 1,200 of its employees to IBM as part of a larger IT transformation initiative. So their relationship is very interesting. The dynamics of that relationship is interesting. We talk about IBM being strong on the customer experience side, but IBM still uses Ogilvy as their campaign, running campaign, their marketing agency. So, and the vice versa, Ogilvy still taps into IBM's IP, especially when it comes down to getting the technology and the platforms that they need to run down the campaign. So it's a tight relationship essentially between the two. RGA is certainly an agency to keep a close eye on within the next 6 months to a year. The agencies have started adopting a new framework of reference when it comes down to their business transformation capabilities around their strategy, digital strategy. They are looking to apply functional integration framework where, as an approach, they're trying to create an ecosystem of value for their clients and kind of preach that to their clients and help them to, as a client, to start and be like, okay, we have Nike, for example, and we have Nike, and we have Nike Plus and Nike Run Plus and all the, essentially all the rest of the rings of that network. What's really happening is you need that brand and you start getting to cross-sell and upsell different services and products, and essentially adopting that framework as part of the business transformation unit. That could be a really good approach for a lot of other vendors to kind of learn if it's proven successful, for example. Gentlemen, have anything to add? Stuart, Patrick, on any of the vendor groups?
Yeah, certainly, Boz, this is Stuart. I think that, when we think about the performance of the firms that are in the benchmark between our last benchmark and this benchmark, what we really see is a tightening up of the field, right? So the horses are on the track. The early leaders, are still kind of sprinting away, but the pack is really tightening up. We certainly haven't made it into the back section of the track yet. There's a lot of runway to go. So what is it going to take for firms to be able to break out at scale, right? So certainly, Boz has talked about the need for platforms, the need for the platforms to resonate and have a powerful go-to-market that doesn't increase expense, right? So these are all challenges in bringing the services around the platforms to the market, industrialization of services, global scale, and this is really needs to be, based on our customer research, really close to the customers as well. Another key piece here is in favor of the strategy-led vendors, because they're more used to dealing with process and cultural change. And those are two of the key barriers that we see among the customers. It's not just adopting the technology. If you're going to truly get the breakout advantages of the digital technology, you need to adjust your business processes, and you certainly need to change your cultures. Your culture internally, as well as the way you relate with your customers. And so those are very large challenges, and firms that can address both of those, we anticipate will experience breakout success. And so I'd like to wrap up the presentation today and turn it over for questions. This is the material in today's presentation is based on our business benchmarking of the digital marketing services segment. We also create vendor reports that look specifically at how a firm like Accenture or IBM or Sapient execute their digital marketing services business. We've just published a digital marketing services customer adoption report that looks at how enterprises are working with the service firms where their budgets are going, the drivers and barriers of behavior and their satisfaction and future plans. And certainly all the time we're working on driving out news-based or event-based commentaries and thought leadership pieces. So anybody available, please reach out to us. We're happy to engage and provide advisory services.
All right, so let's get to the question, the Q&A here. So please send any questions you have to the Q&A function. Let's see what we get. All right, what are customers saying about barriers and drivers?
Well, this is Stuart. Since I just brought that up, when I think about the customer research that we've just come back from the field and which was conducted kind of worldwide, we think about the barriers being those things that are table stakes. So the top three that we see are integration. So there are many point solutions and a few suites. A lot of customers are using all kinds of different mixes of these. So integration at the technical level is incredibly important. Also, since a fairly strong proportion of firms use multiple service firms for digital marketing services, integration across service companies is important. And Boz, do you have any more barriers that you'd like to speak to? And then we can jump to the drivers of the behavior.
No, I mean, in terms of the barriers, when it comes down to what customers are looking at, I mean, we have the traditional marketing barriers of how the marketers have to react to, but also, looking at more of the digital age and really who's doing what around the migration of services and data management. So it's the way we look at the market. I mean, the barriers are the one that actually vendors have to be able to address in order to stay competitive. They have to have it in their back pocket. It's really what's kind of the drivers in terms of like, hey, can we reach the drivers? Do we have the capabilities to address the drivers that customers are expecting to drive the business? It's kind of like in a reverse order, but barriers are there for adoption, but vendors on their end have to be able to operate in that competitive market in order to be able to do that. So just kind of from like a broader view, the way we look at the market and vendors' adoption versus customers' perception as well.
Yep. And on the driver side, what we see is really a mix of traditional marketing kind of achievements, right? So raising brand awareness, improving digital traffic, improving the conversion rates, but really the longer-term perspective that we have is once these have been achieved, what does that lead to? And that's truly connecting the marketing function through the measurement of investment to being able to measure the return on marketing investment. And that's an achievement that elevates the importance of marketing, allows the marketing function to begin to shift from being a cost center to being strongly correlated with profits and revenue, much more so than they are today. And that's really the achievement, the end goal for all marketing organizations where they should be facing.
All right, another question came in. Is IBM managing to keep hired digital talent in the firm as it tries to build its marketing agency organically? How about cultural differences comparing a native marketing agency versus IBM interactive experiences?
Yeah, this is Patrick. That's an excellent question, and the key part of it there is the cultural differences in a native marketing agency and IBM, which no matter where within IBM you fit, IBM is still a technology company 100,000%. When you talk to folks at IBM, you get a great story about all the things that they're doing around consulting, around digital, around business transformation. You hear a very good song and dance about how they're solving customers' business problems, and then you take it to the next level, and it's very much about the technology. So the challenge for IBM is going to be continuing to evolve so that their own culture not only accepts and promotes, but really rewards and nurtures a talent that is different from what IBM has traditionally been. So the short answer to the question now is we don't know. We don't know if IBM is successfully keeping the talent that they brought on board. This goes back a couple of years ago now to where they started hiring away from Ogilvy and Mather and others. But we do know that as a culture that it's slow to change, but it has been pushing in the direction of becoming less of a technology-centered company and more of a consulting, more of a business transformation company. That's where those folks are going to fit in if they're going to fit in. If they don't make that change soon enough, my guess is, Boz, those folks would be gone, right?
Yeah, I mean, in that direction, sorry. And so, as Patrick pointed out, IBM is still a technology kind of first approach, but it has also, the interactive experience unit has started to change that perception, and it has a unique opportunity to, if it's scaled up across IBM, to make IBM more of an IBM kind of a vendor agnostic rather than IBM agnostic, IBM first approach, essentially. So the design thinking, we take it for the concept, for example, in interactive experience, design thinking is widely adopted. But from conversations with IBM and kind of getting into understanding really how do they apply design thinking into their methodology, it's still in the solution development and really getting to know the customer and getting to embrace that when it comes down to the technology and really addressing that. The way we see it is design thinking is a great concept, but to scale it up and IBM Interactive Experience, I mean, they're still leading the pack at this point, but for the future, like 3 to 5 years, to sustain that lead, it's really applying it more beyond just the technology development. It's selling it as a service and adopting it into their strategy-led discussions with their clients and be a little more consultative rather than being IBM first. And IBM Interactive Experience has the opportunity to embrace that culture because it's a smaller unit. It roughly generates about 2 to 3% of their overall IBM services revenue. So it's nimble. The dynamics of the team are a little bit different than the traditional IBM, so there is opportunity, but if they don't start tweaking that soon enough, as Patty pointed out, then all the creative talent they're getting and poaching from other creative agencies, they may face some challenges.
All right. I think we have one more question here. Are you considering adding any vendors to your coverage?
As I pointed out earlier, we are looking in the space closely. We're monitoring who the contenders are. The customer research gave us a good sense of the adoption rates among vendors that are beyond the benchmark coverage. Talking about India-centric vendors, talking about software vendors, we're looking at someone like Dell, as well as someone like HP, someone like SAP, Salesforce, how they are participating. Are they coming from the platform space? Are they coming from services opportunities in India-centric vendors? Where do they fit in the stack? Do they build a whole stack, or they fit in the customer experience? We're around the interactive and mobile and commerce positioning. So certainly keeping our finger on the pulse of the market. Customer research is a good indicator of who should we pursue a little bit closer and get a little bit closer in terms of the interaction on our end. So yes, the answer is yes, we are exploring and adding additional coverage.
All right, so that's all we have for questions. So I'd like to thank our analysts for presenting today, as well as our attendees for attending and for sending in your questions. You can follow the analysts as well as TBR on Twitter, and please check out our pages on SlideShare and YouTube to view our previously aired presentations. Additionally, before you sign off, I'd like to ask you to take a brief survey on today's webinar. We're always looking to improve both the information we provide and how we provide it to you. We'll leave the chat function open for another minute or so for people to ask last-minute questions. Otherwise, thanks for attending and have a good one.